Good evening, everyone. I would like to go ahead and call our meeting to order. We have 6 board members present this evening. We'll go ahead and move on to item 2A, adoption of the agenda.
I would move for approval of the agenda as presented.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. You may cast your vote.
We can do a hand vote.
Okay, we'll move on to item 3A, public comment. Maria, is there any public comment this evening?
No public comments tonight.
Thank you. As a reminder, anyone wishing to provide public comments should complete the request to submit public comments form on the website. This form will need to be completed by 1 p.m. on Wednesday, the day of the board meeting. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Items listed on the consent agenda are considered by the Board of Education to be routine business items. Approval of the items may be made by a single motion, second, and majority vote with no separate discussion of any item listed. Should a member of the board desire to discuss any item at his or her request, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. What are the wishes of the board?
I move to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Do you want us to hand vote or are we?
It's open.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to item 7A, which is considering the approval of the tentative agreement and negotiated agreement for licensed professionals, administrator salary schedule, classified exempt salary schedule, and classified salary schedule for the 24-25 school year.
All right, Mrs. Pam Stranathan will present this information, Assistant Superintendent of Business Operations. We're excited. The teacher, our licensed staff ratified through the vote, and so now we bring it to the board for their approval.
Yep, we're excited about that. So provided in your packages were the document, which is the tentative agreement. And one of the things with the tentative agreement is that we've had kind of 2 agreements. We've had the negotiated agreement and then this tentative agreement, which really the tentative agreement should be what comes to the board to vote on, and then it merges into the negotiated agreement. So there's not 2 agreements floating out there. And then anything that would be tabled or for discussion would be tabled and then brought back in, potentially could be put in to the new one for the following year to move into the negotiated. So just to share a little bit of the process. I picked out some of the bigger items here, and then if there's any questions, there's several staff members also that served on subcommittees with the negotiated agreement, and so they can also answer some of those off of their subcommittees. Some of the big things on there is our health insurance. Now, our premiums have not come in yet. We're still in that process, but the group, the committee wanted to go ahead and move forward with it and get this settled and then come up with. So what happened was there's been a decision that we're going from 530 to 580, and then if it should happen to be any, like let's say our premiums come back great, there still was a discussion about wanting to at least be a figure in there to where they would still have to pay. So it wouldn't just be 100% given to them, where it would end up costing the district several $1 million to try to cover everybody under that policy. So, and then we saw where the single plus and above would go from 580 to 630, that they would be able to apply towards their premiums. So. And then employee discipline was another area that came up from the staff and was discussed, and there was a subcommittee that was a part of that. You'll see that on page 12, which is Article 6, that was put into the negotiated agreement. That was also vetted with attorneys and discussions there to make sure that we would stay within compliance. Due process had set out in that tentative agreement and has been there for a few years. And so that now is moved into the negotiated agreement on page 14. And then you'll see on page 17 the salary scale. $750 was added to the base, and then we added on the steps 26 and 27 for those that had topped out, and was able to give them a little bit of a bump there. So, and that was if you had a master's or plus. So any questions? I know that was a quick version of it. There's a lot in there, so yes.
Any idea when we expect to hear on premiums for health insurance?
Yes, so Kate and I have a meeting on Monday to hear what those potentially are going to be and some of those coming back. And then we have a meeting with the Health Insurance Committee the following week, I believe is the date that we've set up with them. So excited to hear that. I don't want to say anything yet. So we had a little bit of early. It wasn't like what we got last year, let's put it that way, the drastic number. So, but that was even before it was going to others. The broker had not taken it yet to anybody else. That was just coming in with some Blue Cross and Blue Shield, so.
I know we had talked about, one of our goals, I think, as a board was to increase our starting teacher salary. And I know that's in here, but I also had a question about the classified staff salary. And I read something that said like 1.7%.
Yes.
Could you explain that?
Yeah, so across the board, when you take that percentage of what was given to the teacher's base and you apply it to everybody else, it's about a 1.779% increase. I know that in the past there was discussion and some phasing, like a phase 1, 2, and 3, to bring up the classified. At this time, to pull that phase 3 in with what the cost was going to be, it was just not going to be a good fit for the district moving forward right now. Now, it's something we can come back and look at, though, and keep addressing as we keep moving forward. I know one of the goals initially in the past was to try to get the base up to 50,000, and that takes quite a bit of funds to get that to that point. So the focus this year was to get something on the base, and there were 3 options that was looked at, which is attached, and then look at that cost. And then the other thing was also to bring in the insurance and to take a look at that, what we could provide.
Are there other questions? I would say, and we've talked about this before, that I think that if we're willing to contribute up to $580, I wish that we would just do that no matter what the premium is for employee-only plans. But that's a further discussion that we could have when the insurance comes back in.
Yep.
Okay. So this is an action item.
I move to approve the negotiated agreement and tentative agreement for licensed professionals, administrator salary schedule, classified exempt salary schedule, and classified salary schedule for 2024-2025, and a $50 per month increase to health insurance fringe for all staff as submitted.
I second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, you can cast your vote.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is 7B, fees at Emporia High School.
Okay. Mr. Bo Welch, Assistant Principal at Emporia High School, is going to talk about the fees, correct? Correct.
Hello, everybody. We just request trying to raise our adult fees from $5 to $7, and that's kind of consistent with the rest of our league. The majority of our league has gone to 7 and 5. We talk about it a lot at our athletic director meetings. We're one of the 2 who have not done that yet. Our bylaws in our league state 7 and 5 is our max that we can go to. And I think it's a lot to do with, I'm gonna talk a little bit about the yearbook too, but it's just everything's more expensive. Budgets aren't getting any bigger. I think a perfect example is the yearbook, which we're trying to raise that $10 as well. But Ms. Schwinn had talked about that's going to cost us $7 more in just printing this year. So I think it's kind of a given that something has to happen there. And she also said that this is the first time we've raised the prices on the yearbooks in like 10 years. So, but I think overall, really for gate fees, it's more about being consistent kind of with the rest of our league. And it's really, I feel like where we have to go just due to everything being more expensive. And like I said, budgets aren't getting bigger. We're just trying to keep up with everything, which we are right now, but it's getting harder. You know, I can say it's definitely getting harder, so.
Questions?
Yeah, and thank you for sharing how much more the yearbook is going to cost to print, because it is an amazing book that we've loved getting every year. So, I mean, kudos to Mrs. Schwinn and everyone at the high school for making that such a great document. But, I mean, I do support the increase of fees. I mean, I hate that we have to increase their yearbook fees that much, but like you said, this is the first time in a long time. So thanks for also letting us know how much more it'll cost to print.
Yeah.
And $7 for the activity fee is, as you well know, nothing compared to an MAYB weekend fee. So, yeah, I understand everything is more expensive, and we certainly want to make sure that whatever we're contributing pays for officials, because those are coming at a premium now. And so, yeah, I get it. Yeah.
It's all gotten harder. I mean, you're paying $60 a weekend now when you go to a weekend tournament at some of those places. So, yeah, it's gotten a little wild.
I have a question, but I don't expect you to necessarily know the answer. But regarding the yearbooks, do you know so many things, hardcover type things, sales are lower? Do you know how well their sales go for yearbooks compared
I
to?
don't.
Yeah, and that's okay. I mean,
I know that I would agree that it's a great book, you know. And
Right, exactly.
every year when I get mine, my kids want to look at it for an hour, you know, and every once in a while I'll go back to it, you know, and they're not even in high school yet.
Exactly,
So,
yeah.
yeah, it's great.
Okay, thanks.
We can get that information for you, though.
Okay.
Is there any discount for seniors? Do seniors still pay $5 or do they pay $7 too?
I would assume a discount. Yeah, I think we've always done a discount for our seniors. You know, I think Jill's got passes there at the high school that they come in and get in contact with her, and we take care of them.
Yeah, my dad has one of those, and I wish we'd thought of it sooner, but last year was the first year he had that for the whole year, and he really appreciated having that
You know,
discount.
what's interesting is, you know, we started having digital tickets, and when we first did that, I didn't anticipate the older generation using those much, and I've kind of learned that it's so much easier for them. You know, that a lot of they do have the phones, and it's so easy, just show and go. So that's another option that we have.
I'm so glad you mentioned the digital pass and being able to do it all online. I mean, it has been huge this year, and so just thank you for having the foresight to do that.
It's very easy, and it's the way the world is going. So
You never say something's easy. You just be like, it was the hardest thing I've ever done.
well, it's easy for everybody else. It takes me a lot of time to put it in.
So I guess that's a good question. I guess the follow-up question I had is, I know that you can get a season pass to events in the building, right? For athletic events, I think. So is that price increasing also?
Yeah, that would go up. I think we put it at $10. We increased the season pass $10, I think.
Okay.
So if you go into if you're into the digital tickets, you know, we have a bunch of different passes. You know, we have a fall season pass. We have a winter season pass. And those all increased, you know, just a few dollars. But yeah, everything increased on that, or will increase on that.
Are there any other questions? Okay, this is an action item.
I move to approve the $2 increase for the adult entrance fee for Emporia High School activities and a $10 increase to the yearbook fee as submitted.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. You may cast your vote.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay, items.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next 4 items are all second readings from the handbooks that we looked at last time. We'll start with item 7C. This is the licensed staff handbooks for preschool, elementary, Emporia Middle School, and Emporia High School and the Flint Hills Learning Center for the next school year.
Okay, Mr. Jared Giffen, Director of HR, is here to present, and we did do a lot of formatting changes across the handbooks, and so Mr. Giffen did a lot of work on that. Thank you.
Yes, we did a lot of formatting, but to this first agenda item that I'll speak to, there weren't a lot of changes that were suggested to the faculty handbook changes for elementary, middle, or high schools. So really, it was just a lot of formatting that we tried to do across all of the handbooks to get them in a little bit more consistent fashion. I know we've got some more work to do on those as we tackle them this year, but I think they're in a much better spot than previous. So again, no major changes to these 3 handbooks that are in front of you.
They do look really nice. Thank you.
I move to approve the licensed staff handbooks as submitted.
Second.
Great, there's been a motion and a second.
Motion passes 6-0.
Item 7D is the Emergency Operations Plan updates.
So this one should be a quick one, I hope. Again, formatting. The only other real substantial change to this was we updated a couple of position titles in the first couple of pages there. And then, as we spoke about before, adding a classroom kit to the appendix, just a few items there that are suggested for some of those classroom crisis kits. Are there any questions about the EOP?
I did have one quick question. I don't know if anyone else saw it, but the Lyon County Emergency, like the dispatch folks, you know, I can't think of her name right now.
Roxana Van Gundy?
Roxy.
Yeah, Van Gundy.
Yes, thank you. She had posted the other day about AED locations and that there's like a website that people can go to and it will tell you where they are. Okay. And I didn't know if that was something, I'm sorry that I'm thinking of this now, but I saw AED on there and it said locations. So I don't know if that's something we want to contribute to. Because I don't think it would like reveal anything about the building, but it was, so like at ESB we have them at both of our Emporia locations. And she said an ESB shows up on the map. So I just wondered if we would want to put our AED devices on that list.
Like something for the general public?
Yeah, it's,
Right.
I can't remember what it was called,
Yeah.
but it was part of like a heart,
Right.
you know, a campaign, a nationwide thing database. And I just thought that would be a really good idea for us to add since we have so many now.
Yeah.
It would be awesome if we added that because other people use our buildings sometimes. So
Yeah.
Sorry to derail that.
No worries. I
Yeah,
was just
that
talking
plan.
to Mr. Clay this morning. He was going around checking AEDs and getting them ready for the school year. So it's something I can sure ask him about and something we can sure look into.
I move to approve the emergency operations plans as submitted.
I second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second.
Motion passes 6-0.
Item 7E is the Classified Substitute and Administrator Handbooks for 2024-2025.
And one change that is not in the summary on the administrator is adding back the Director of Health Services position. So we'll do that after. And I notified the board this afternoon about that change. And so that was already a position that was approved, so we don't have to bring that back for approval. So, thank you.
Okay.
All right, thanks,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Gibbon.
Right, a couple of other items in these 3 handbooks. The classified handbook, first of all, I think the one change that was suggested there was revisiting the per diem amount for in-state travel. So we did address that in the classified handbook and the administrator handbook where those appeared, so that with supervisor approval, per diems could be allowed for meals for in-state travel. So that was on the classified one. Let's see, the substitute, there wasn't anything in it that we changed other than formatting. And then the administrator handbook, aside from what Dr. Harder mentioned there, let me get to my changes here. I think the only other change there was clarifying language on the stipends for the national certifications or the ESL endorsement. Are there any questions about classified substitute or administrator handbooks?
I move to approve the classified substitute and administrator handbooks as submitted.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay, and then our last handbook for this evening is item 7F, athletic handbook updates and the new activities handbook for 24-25.
All right, for the athletic handbook, we'll start with that one first. A few changes that we did make there that I think were suggested last time. We added a phrase to ensure coaches were following the CASA guidelines on the length of practices. We added some information about coaches being on time to practices and games, which align with the start and end of their school day. We added language about use of Parent Square to communicate. We added language to ensure that coaches take AEDs with them on away trips. I think we've looked into that and are looking at purchasing some others if we don't have those available. So we're taking steps there. We also added language about administrators being allowed to contact potential coaching candidates, current employers, or past employers, and particularly if they work within the school district in another school, just making sure that administrator is aware of the possibility of that person being hired as a coach and that they share in understanding what additional obligations there might be there. It was suggested that we add the student handbook information about eligibility to the athletic handbook, and we did that. And then, again, we added information about the location of AEDs at the high school and middle school with maps and just those locations at the end of the athletic handbook. Are there any questions about the athletic piece before I move on to the activities?
I have a question. Thanks for making the changes on a lot of our suggestions. I do have a question on page 17. Employment of assistant coaches. So the new practice says administrators reserve the right to contact a potential candidate supervisor or employer. So tell me how that might be applied and in what situations would it not be applied?
If we're looking at references, we obviously contact references, and many of those current or former employers are listed. You know, if they are working in another school in the district, it might be their third year teaching, and they've decided to get into coaching. That would be an opportunity there. You know, if they're working, let's say, in another school district, we would want to know if, in fact, that person would be able to meet the obligations of being a coach in our district. So that would be one example of why that might be in place.
So when would you not? When would you decide not to make a phone call to see if someone's available to fulfill the schedule and the obligations?
Right. I think if there are questions, obviously we would want to make that call. Typically, we'll use the references that are listed on an application, and those are the ones that we're calling that list their current supervisors and things like that. But if there's a question about when that might take place, if they might be able to meet the obligations or not, we would encourage athletic directors or coaches or whomever to make that call.
I guess I'm struggling to understand maybe like when would you and when wouldn't you? Like I understand like you reserve the right, so that means it's kind of subjective. Right. So I guess when do we, like, do you understand like? So
we could change the wording
no,
and
I'm
just
not
say.
Suggesting, I'm just asking like what would be make it subjective and not subjective. So.
Obviously, the wording, but I think anytime we're looking at that, if we've gotten a lukewarm reference call on one of the listed references, it might be that we'll go back to the application and look at employers and contact that person. Again, I think if they're just questions that we've got about whether they're a suitable candidate, we want them to be able to support our kids and support our schools, which means being there on time, being there for practices and events and things like that. So I'm sorry, I'm not giving a better answer, and it is a little subjective. But we've listed a lot of things as far as how to contact references in our hiring and orientation and onboarding document for administrators to use. So I apologize, Mrs. Reaver, I'm not answering your question very well. So
it's good. I'm sorry. Okay. I just think I want policy to make sure it's really clear. So I just feel like I wanted to be clear too.
Sure.
So.
Well, and I guess I had another question. If we're putting like start times or something in here, does that get impact any of our current practices that are they going to have to be adjusted to fit into this new framework? So is it kind of retroactive? Are we going to?
Right. I think we're looking at this from past practice, but also making sure that we're, holding people to the expectations that we have. It could affect some practice times by a few minutes. If there's a coach that can't get there, they may need to start 5 minutes later, as long as it's close to the start or end time of the school day, or if it's way outside of those times, it has the principal or athletic director approval.
Yeah, and the only reason I asked is I did hear from a parent about some practice time. So I'm assuming this would address the issue that I heard, so.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome. Other questions?
Okay, if there are no further questions, this is an action item.
Let me hit the activities book real quick.
Yes,
I think they go together here. I'm sorry. Just didn't want to put the cart before the horse there. So with the activities handbook, there weren't a lot of changes there. We did add information about sponsors trying to get their events and activities on the district or school website so that people could attend those. We added information about the use of Parent Square to communicate with folks, and then also the AED locations there at the high school. That concludes. Any questions about that?
Okay, now if there are no questions, this is an action item.
I move to approve the athletic handbook and activities handbook as submitted.
I second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. And thank you for all your work on the handbooks.
Took a lot of great people to do that.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay, our next item is item 8A, the strategic plan quarterly report.
Okay. If you'll put, no, we're going to keep that for the Q&A. So if you will pull up the presentation, please. All right. Okay, so this is our second quarterly report. And we're doing things a little bit differently. So the last time we were reading our audience, and we saw that our board members are getting a little glassy-eyed with a number of graphs and figures, which are all really important, but it wasn't important to duplicate the work that's in the quarterly report and pull it into our presentation. So we really wanted people, not only our board members, but also our community members and parents and even students and community members to really dig into that actual report because we have a lot of good information. So we reference... Are you calling me now? No. And I never turn that off because it does not go off. Okay, sorry. We have one more, so we have to, it has to go in threes, so we need one more person to call. Okay. So, everybody check our phones, please. Oh. Yeah, you do that in a presentation, right? Remind the audience, but not the presenters to turn their phones off. So we're excited because we are seeing some progress. And so there's been a lot of hard work, and we'll go through each of the different sections as we have. So rather than having all of our DST members stand up and present, we thought it would be a little less awkward if we had everybody sit, and then we'll just take turns as their section comes up. And then when it's time for Q&A, then we actually have a mic that we're just going to pass around. So it just makes this run hopefully a little bit smoother, and we'll take some feedback. So hand it over to Tara Glades.
Thank you, Dr. Harder. My phone ringer is off, just so we're clear. I'm excited about that. But I'm also excited to share some of the growth that we're seeing in our English language arts. Exciting to see that. Our second bullet there, kindergarten and first grade, I'm just going to say wow, because our kindergarten and first grade really outperformed our spring assessment window in all subtests. So that would include the letter sounds, word segmentation, letter names, and nonsense words. And specifically on the first graders for word segmentation, like they're almost off of the charts. And that kind of skill really lends itself to being a better reader, to comprehension, even to writing. So we're super excited to see that. Our percentage of students at low risk on the past three spring FastBridge windows has continued to increase in our grades 2, 4, and 5. And then our HMH intro to reading and that letters training that we have been doing at the elementary level, we're really starting to see the positive impact of that. So we're super excited about that as well. All right, so challenges. So we continue to see that our student stamina on that A reading assessment is not quite where it needs to be. So we'll continue to work on that. I know we've talked about this at board meetings, but our ESSER funds are going to be expiring here September 2024. So what that means to us is that we no longer have those funds to provide those stipends to our cohort groups who have been doing the letters training for us. So we've had 2 cohort groups go so far. Those ESSER funds are expiring at this time. So as far as the benchmark data at the high school level, it's very difficult to compare benchmark data on, I think that's our CBMs. When we are talking about our high school grades, the KSDE Dyslexia Handbook says that our 9th graders must take that assessment, and any student new to our district within the first 2 weeks that they arrive to us must take that assessment. Now, if those students reach benchmark, they don't have to take the assessment at the following window. So that makes it really hard to compare and kind of look at data. So that's another challenge that we face. Next steps, we're going to continue to adjust our curriculum guides based on those vertical conversations that we've been having. At our last board meeting, we talked about a lot of that vertical conversation and alignment that we had been doing, so that was fun to hear about. And then we will continue to identify those evidence-based resources that are on the approved KSDE list that we will use with our Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions for ELA. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm going to talk a little bit about math. In math, we had a pretty good year. Students in grades 4, 8, and 9 outperformed their assessment windows in the past, which is good. I want to dig into that a little bit and kind of talk to you about what they actually do, what those grade levels have done over the past 3 windows. You can see that for 4th grade, we started out with 44% at low risk and post-secondary ready. In spring 23, that 4th grade class moved to 57, and then this past 4th grade class moved to 57%. So that's the whole grade level. That's the same grade level every year. So that's not cohorts, it's just grade level. So that is kind of a testament to the work we're doing with our curriculum guides and our instruction, because that grade level is showing some growth. But that's important because that's, 13% of the students moved up, which if you think about 300 kids, 13%, that's almost 40 kids that we've moved up those 2 levels, which is really good. In 8th grade, you can see the growth there from 41 to 53, which is also really good. And the freshmen, they moved from 40% to 46%. We talked to you about data talks in the past. Our data talks seem to be having an improvement. They're really focusing on what they need to do to improve at their school level. And then also our math curriculum guide, our new math resource. Teachers are getting better with it, and I think in year 3 you're going to see a lot more growth with that. Some challenges. Again, we have a lot of teachers, or not a lot, but we have several grade levels where we have new and alternative track teachers. We still have a skill deficiency or a skill gap at our grade level, so it's hard for our teachers to differentiate across with such a huge gap in each classroom, but I think we're starting to see that decrease a little bit. Chronic absenteeism has still been an issue. I do have some good news about that. Preliminarily, it looks like we're under 30% this past year, so we decreased or improved, I guess. Decrease is an improvement. We increased or we improved our chronic absenteeism rate by about 4% preliminarily. That data is not finalized, but just looking at it, we're under 30%, which is good. Some of our next steps is we'll continue to do our instructional support and continue to work on Tier 2 and Tier 3 support for our students.
Okay, and I get to talk about our social emotional development goal. So if you move to the next one. When we look at data, sometimes we focus on what needs to improve, and in this, we need to really celebrate the success of those times in the year when behaviors are decreasing. So when we have those times when behaviors go down, what are we doing in the classrooms, in the schools at those periods of the year to really help with that? And then how can we look at that to maybe put some more of those things in place throughout the entire year? So making sure we collaborate with staff to determine what really is happening during those times when we have seen those bigger decreases throughout that calendar year. We also have the district-wide implementation of CKH, so making sure that we really foster that. And now that we are a district-wide CKH implementation, we have the implementation going, really making sure that that stays at the forefront and we foster that throughout the entire district. We have added a behavior support specialist this year. She's ready to go. She's a new staff member, so she's been gearing up, and her office is just down the hall. She is excited about the new role. I've been working alongside her, and we've already been actually planning some of the SSS meetings and those types of things throughout the year, so she is ready to go. And we will continue to improve logging, discipline, and behavior. I'm actually meeting with Stephanie Murray, and we're really going to try to focus on how we can make that a more clear way for our secretaries and our SSS team, as well as our counselors and building principals, to make sure that we're all logging that information in a succinct way and a clear way across the district. Some of our challenges, we will be looking at ongoing professional development. We had a lot of great, hearty professional development on the tough kid and some of the behaviors that are really with those tier 3 students, but then also looking at what we can do with behaviors across the board with that social emotional learning and how we can just keep supporting teachers through those types of things. When we talk about Jennifer Casey's role as that behavior support specialist, she's actually looking at what she can offer throughout the year to support teachers in all areas, whether it's pre-K through 12th grade. There was an increase of student behaviors during the last month of school. The one thing to say about that is a trend nationwide. So when you end a school year, students feel that and they know that their daily lives of going to school are changing. And so they kind of up the ante. It's like, playing mom and dad with behavior. It's a little bit like that, gets a little bit like that at the end of the year. So behaviors do ramp up a little bit, but we would like to just see them just stay a little bit more consistent across the board and see how we can support that and foster that. Next steps, we will continue with implementation of CKH, obviously. Convocation, we have a great CKH event coming up, so we're excited about that. We are also doing things at the district level and having CKH be more of a part of our world with agendas and things like that as well. We will, like I said, continue that professional development focus. Jennifer Casey has those plans in place, and then we will continue listening to the needs of our students, staff, and principals of what the needs are in regards to social emotional learning.
Good evening. I'll be talking about some of the culture and communication opportunities and some of the strengths and areas that we can grow on there. And the first thing I'd like to talk just a little bit about is strengths for the early enrollment opportunities that we're having for our students, for our families. We took the opportunity when the legislators made the changes in out-of-district transfers to take advantage of that opportunity and to go ahead and get those numbers and things like that we need to which really helps our enrollment procedures and processes. So by having them earlier, we can anticipate those class sizes for the 24-25 school year and see what those number of seats are going to be like and look and see how we need for staffing and all of those kinds of things that will be helpful for that. So just this past week, we opened up the simplified enrollment process, and so we have been working through that. Actually, it's been 1 week, and excited to report that we've had just under 2,000 of our families complete that process that intend to return. And so if you know me, I'm a numbers kind of thing, and I like to see like reports and that and see as they grow. And so like if I ever do a Google form or that sort of thing, and I kind of treat this as that. And so I constantly check it to see, if we have 2 more, 4 more, that sort of thing. And so I kind of enjoy this part of it. we always want to get more people to complete that process. And so we've been working through that, definitely looking at some of the things that we can do and improve upon for the next years, but definitely a strength by being able to do that and simplify that process for our families and for the students to be able to get those numbers for the district to be able to prepare earlier for those numbers. Challenges of this process. We still had, when we started this process, so we kind of ended July 1st to start this new process and to transfer everything over. We still have a portion of our students from the kindergarten class and preschool classes that need to enroll. So we're working through those to be able to get those enrolled as quickly as possible, and we would definitely like to have a higher percentage of that, but I feel that we're in a good spot for starting this new process and working through that as we do this from year to year, why our families will kind of grow to know that, okay, hey, if I have kindergarten, pre-K, those are going to do that in March, and summertime I just need to reevaluate, or do that verification process, any updates, that sort of thing as well. And so creating that process will definitely help. Like I said, we've had a few challenges, but I feel good about where we're at with that. Next steps for that, but actually before I get to that, I definitely want to give a shout out to Stephanie Murray, who has put that process together for us and getting those steps so that we have that verification process and making that a simpler process for our families. So I definitely appreciate her efforts with that. And then our enrollment staff who are going through some of those growing pains with us as we get through the steps for doing this as well. So appreciate all of those. Let's see. Next slide will be continue with culture and communication as well. Talk just a little bit about the Parent Square implementation. Parent Square implementation, which includes the Remind, is the new platform that we're using for this year. The nice thing about being able to do that is everybody is on one platform, whether you have kindergarten, pre-K, high school, coaches, all of those things, to have one platform. One of the things that I have noticed over the course of the last few weeks, we sent out communication and we had families download the app and start using that app, which is great. But over the enrollment process, I've seen that grow substantially. So I sent out a communication day about the school supplies and noticed that we had over 1,260 people have downloaded the app. And so really feel excited about that. School hasn't even started. We've just done some summer stuff and we've done some of the enrollments. So definitely think that will be a strength. One of the challenges of communicating with our families is, across the board, that two-way communication. We always have families that seems like it's hard to reach, whether it's a language barrier, whether it's a technology situation, those kinds of things with that. Always will be challenges, but I feel like Parent Square, we're making some great strides with that. So we're excited about that opportunity. Next steps, obviously we'll continue with Parent Square and then also just having that consistent district communication, but also just total communication and kind of stepping through that on page 38 of our document has that complete process for the district communication plan. And so encourage you to take a little bit of light reading through there just to see all the different things that we do for the district as far as across the board for two-way and staff and family communication. So thank you.
So the next goal is about recruiting and retaining staff, as well as providing competitive compensation and benefits. The compensation package was approved tonight, so that's a good way for us to continue to recruit and retain. Some great things we saw out of this last quarter were that we know that we're going to have 2 strategists at each of our elementary schools. It's exciting to get another person back in each of those schools. We do have 2 registered teacher apprenticeship candidates hired, and they've started things already. In fact, we were working on some paperwork today. A few of us have made presentations to some of the teaching classes up at ESU. That certainly helps us recruit and get our foot in the door there. We've created a new hiring orientation and onboarding packet. It's really a guide for our administrators and directors to use to guide them through the processes. I'll have Mrs. Stranathan speak here a little bit to the Skyward Cumulative implementation.
I'm going to jump in and out here. So I think what's really exciting is that Skyward has been around for a long time and has been very clunky. And with the cumulative, their updates that they have done, we've been able now to make some big shifts that are going to make some big changes in some of the reports that we're able to pull out, some of the collaboration that's not just with personnel, but also going through contracts and things rolling over from year to year and not having to stop and drop and try to enter things. So since last Thursday, they have been working, Paul and also Kate have been working to try to get the systems up and running, and it's taken, I think Skyward had this feeling that they were going to get it done on Friday, and then when they saw the amount of stuff that we're asking to get merged, is that they realized, oh, that's going to take a little bit longer. So we've been moving into this week, but it's exciting to know that, especially reporting for staff to be able to look at budgets and to be able to go in with that. So it's time to change on that.
So the last two items on this page, our exit interview feedback was really positive this year. Dr. Harder and I either met face-to-face or staff members had the opportunity to submit a survey with for those that were leaving the district, just on their overall experiences, but a lot of positive comments this year compared to last. So also the teacher turnover rate has decreased this year. About 5 years ago, we were at about a 10% teacher turnover rate. The next year it went to 13%, then 15, then 20. We were back down a little bit last year, and so it's good to see us back down. Let me pull a percentage here real quick. I think this year's was about 12.3%. So it's getting back to that manageable stage there. Some other strengths that we saw came out of a retention and recruitment survey and the Kansas Teacher Retention Initiative. Dr. Church at ESU and some of his partners helped head that up, but we had some great results that come back from that. We had a good number of our staff respond, about 38% of those that responded. Many of those were in their 20 to 23rd year of teaching. 94% of respondents indicated that they work in an environment where people really do care about each other and about our kids. 80% indicated colleague commitment to do quality work, and it was very evident, and then 89% indicated they know what's expected of them. So some of the challenges, and we've spoken about this before, but many of the candidates who have particularly student teaching experiences in other districts, they've got that connection there, and they're getting snatched up pretty quickly, much as we're doing with the ones that are with us. So it's a pretty competitive world out there, but many of them are either sticking around home or with what they're familiar with. Our alternate track teachers do require a different level of mentoring. I think we've mentioned that before. Teaching and Learning has designed some things this year to get those people a little bit of a jump start before the actual new teacher training. So that was a great experience this year. Another challenge is just the late resignations. That makes it very difficult when we get to late May, June, and July, and we're getting those turned in. Some of our next steps, obviously, we're going to continue our efforts. We're going to continue getting our name out there, being present at events in the community, as well as career fairs around the state. And then we'll continue to implement our new onboarding process, implementation of Frontline Central, cumulative, to help our onboarding process and orientation processes be much smoother. So the next goal is providing a safe and secure environment and meeting the needs of our students and staff. In this one, I'm going to put a kudos out to our security officers, one in the back, for being at events like this, for being at all of our evening events and the things that just take place on the day-to-day at our school. So very, very proud of the two gentlemen that we have in those positions. They actually attended a week-long training in Kansas City in June. I've heard great comments and reviews from them since they've been back. We had a couple of administrators attend the Safe and Supportive School Conference in April. That used to be in late January or February, but it was moved to April this year. Our great work by our nurses and all of our staff on this next one to become recognized as Heart Smart Schools. Thanks Jen Art and all of the nurses, everybody that was a part of making that happen. Improvements to our emergency operations plan. We did add a lot to that, thanks to our District Safety and Security Committee and their recommendations. And then our buildings have updated their reunification, relocation plans so that things are ready to go this year. And then the last one, Ms. Stranathan, you want to speak to that?
And so everybody has seen all the improvements and everything that's going on and continue to go on. One of the things I do want to jump back on is the AED. One of the things that we are looking at and have looked in today is getting extras to put with those groups that had been discussed, like the band and the activity groups that are going out there and going on their own without those devices. So that's something, it's an improvement, and it's also under the safety, so.
Okay, challenges in this area. Mr. Willie back here we were talking just before the meeting about applicants that aren't out there. We've been fortunate to have retired law enforcement officers in these positions, and we just aren't getting a lot of those right now, but hopefully in the future we will. We haven't had a lot of applicants for the unarmed security officer position either. There are a couple out there that we're looking at and calling references on, but hopefully we can get that position filled and at some point here early in the year. And then there was a little bit of an increased attendance at graduation this year. If you were there, the place was packed, which was great. But it did pose a few issues. I've met with our fire chief. In fact, Dr. Harder and Mr. Fisher and I are meeting tomorrow to continue those conversations about how we're planning already for next year and making things more manageable along those fronts. So our next steps, again, that planning for our graduation, we'll continue to monitor and improve our cardiac emergency response plans and try to get that open security officer position filled here immediately.
Good evening. So I will be sharing some information that focuses on our final goal of providing instructional resources and professional development for our staff. So when we look at strengths, one of the things that we are very proud of is really maintaining that focus and developing our current initiatives of AVID, Capturing Kids' Hearts, and PSYOP. We're trying to really keep that as a focus and not bring in a lot more as to not overwhelm our staff. Our buildings are really good at looking at their data and their needs, and they're able to design professional development based upon their individual needs, whether it's teacher needs or based on student data. In relationship to resources, we are looking at input from staff and student data to determine what do we need. And this year, we use that to identify staff. So we are looking at moving back to full-time coaches at the elementary level. We increased those instructional strategists, like Mr. Giffen said. We've got our student support specialist, and we did add that behavior specialist. And then we continue to evaluate our resources. What is needed for instruction? What areas do we need to focus on in relationship to core materials as well as intervention materials? Those challenges, we are very limited on the list of evidence-based practices that has been approved by KSDE. Basically, they were limited on what they could approve as well to meet the statute. But all of those are related to our interventions, and we have interventions that worked that we no longer can use. So that is definitely a challenge for us. AVID and CKH and PSYOP are our large initiatives, and so we have to be very mindful of that so that we don't overwhelm staff. It can be very easy to get pulled into some new idea, and we want to be very careful that we don't find ourselves doing that. And then just maintaining that commitment to fund our professional development and our classroom resources, that is a challenge. ESSER money going away as increased cost, we also have to make sure we're taking care of those things. And I do have to give a shout out to Mrs. Stranathan in the business department for really making that a priority. Our next steps, we will be collaborating with teachers to identify core science materials this upcoming year. And I will tell you, elementary is gung-ho, as well as the science at the secondary level. So we're pretty excited about that. And then our PSYOP training officially begins in August. So we have our PSYOP trainers that receive their training this summer, and they start with their staff in August.
Right, so we're making a lot of good progress. We're also being very transparent about areas that we know that we need to improve. So as we look at our data and we look at what there might be some trends or just analyzing what could be a potential challenge that we need to address, we're being very intentional in making sure that we're involving our principals, instructional coaches, teachers, just making sure that we're getting their input, and especially as we're doing data talks. So there's also a lot of information in the appendices section, so we are open for questions.
don't know if
questions
there's
might you
anyone
have?
in particular that wants to start with questions, how you all want to do this, whatever, does not matter to me.
I'll ask a question. On the letters training, because we found that to be so successful, and we had the ESSER funding, are we thinking we're going to try to continue that and find room in the budget for that? Like how crazy expensive? I know I should remember how much that costs. I'm sure you do. Yes.
So is this on? Okay. So the first cohort was about $120,000 for their 2 years. So what we did is we paid them a $3,000 stipend over 2 years because that's how long the training is. What we would have to do is relook at that stipend. One of the conditions of getting that was that they would come back and they would provide professional development to our staff. We would have to take that condition off so that we could come up with a realistic stipend for them. One of the additional challenges is that is now going to be a requirement for all elementary teachers and administrators, that they will either be letters trained or that they will pass a content-specific test based on structured literacy, or there's another they can participate in. So we may need to look at that. But when you think about how many elementary teachers and administrators we have, that's going to be a pretty costly addition. We have encouraged staff to continue to sign up, but we do want to see how we can support them the best that we can. So we can look at that. We just cannot pay at the rate that we've done.
Sure. Thank you.
I have a question about student stamina. It was highlighted a couple of times, and I know that that's a real issue, but I'm just wondering how do we overcome that? Because that's a hard one. It's so much is out of our control. So maybe it's a rhetorical question, I don't know, but any insight you have, I think would be great.
Well, that was actually identified by one of our elementary buildings a couple of years ago, and others are picking up on that. We're all seeing that. Our teachers are seeing that just with a regular assessment, the kids can't focus to take a 30-minute assessment. So one of the things that the elementary is doing is building time in within their station time or another part of the day where they're building just the reading stamina. We're going to read for 10 minutes. Now we're going to add on to that. And so making it a part of regular activities because kids just aren't used to sitting. We have a real battle with technology because they're on it all the time and you get instant gratification, and it's almost like creating a level of attention span issues with our children. So the schools are right now trying to find strategies to work on building up that stamina. And it's really hard as a teacher. That conversation came up a lot with our lead teachers because they feel that strain, and so they're like, okay, we have to move on to the next thing. So helping them be patient and feel confident in themselves, like it's okay if the kids are struggling a little bit. If you're trying to build up that stamina, I think they worry about what others might think if they walked into the room. But we want them to know it's okay.
I have a question on it'd be slide 19, that talks about the retention and recruitment survey. 38% of staff responded, it said, overall. Was that incentivized in any way? Where were we?
No, it was actually, no, yeah. It was a survey. It actually was the same time as our climate survey, and so we had to wait because our climate survey went out first, and so then we helped after our window closed, and if you remember, we opened it again so we would get more responses on our climate survey.
Right.
We reopened it, but we get that free report when 30% or more respond. So we've been really good. I think the partnership with ESU and the district just helps us, and so I think our staff members are more willing and receptive to answering survey questions to ESU than maybe other places.
Right. It's frustrating because it says the highest percentage were in their 20 to 23rd year of teaching. And I think it would be very valuable to hear from more that are in their first 10 years, because that's a lot of who, Yeah.
And I think it's a really good point, Jim, because we're trying to figure out how to recruit, and so getting that input from the early early career educators. And we have such a great cross-section of new teachers that are coming in and some that are experienced, but teaching is not their background. So they're bringing in a whole different perspective. So we want to get their perspective as well, but we'll continue to look for ways to encourage that survey. And previously, we've tried to also provide some time. So that climate survey was really important to us to make sure that we were providing time for them to answer. And we can look at doing the same thing with this. And so maybe if we just build that time in, then we'll get a better response from some of those early career teachers.
Okay, thank you.
I can go next, and I'm looking at page 6 of the big report. Regarding the figure 4 for math, I noticed there's a disparity between 4th and 5th grade. Sorry, I'll give you a second to get to where I am. Like in 4th grade, it says 54 or 57% are at low risk, but then that goes down to 44. And I just didn't know if you had any insight in what's happening in 4th grade that they're doing really well, and what's happening between 4th and 5th grade, because then it goes back down into the 40% really from 5th grade on.
Well, we've seen that trend for a few years now, and honestly, we have not had time to dig in with the teachers and look at that change, because we did this was at the end of the year, the FastBridge assessment. So I don't have a real good answer for you right at this minute, but it is a trend that we have seen for years. We do a little better in 4th grade, and then we go down to 5th grade. And one of the things Dr. Cargila and I have talked a lot about is there a difference in standards? Is there such a big jump from 4th to 5th that maybe there's some missing pieces in the middle, and that as a 5th grade teacher, you're assuming they're coming in knowing that, but they may not be. And so that's where those vertical conversations in the summer are so important. So that's the one thing that's really hard when you look at FastBridge and state assessments is they don't give us, why are you struggling? What are students not scoring well in? So sometimes it's a little bit difficult to analyze. We can get overall general pictures, but we are looking at that and trying to figure out where those gaps are at.
So to add to that, so on the, I know Ryan kind of covered it, but so that 4th grade, when is the 44 for spring of 23, the 41 for spring of 22 in the 4th grade group? Is that the cohort or the grade level? Because that's still an improvement. I see what you mean, Lillian, that it would drop from 57 to 44. But like, if you look at the gray spring of 22 on 4th grade, is that the same group that is true grade level, not cohort? Bummer. Okay, I was trying.
Yeah. So you actually don't look that. So it's the gray bar in the dark gray bar for 4th grade would be the same class as the star in 5th grade. So it actually, the cohort goes down a little bit. Yeah.
I have a question on page 2. And I'm sure you already know the answer. You're expecting this question, I assume. But 9th grade, that number seems pretty low. And then I also noticed that in the notes, one of the challenges you identified is that not all the students take the assessment in 9th grade. So I'm sure there's an explanation. I wanted to give you an opportunity just to talk about that.
Absolutely. I'm glad you asked about that, Jamie. So the state requires every freshman to take the A-reading assessment. That's our screener. If they don't score low risk, they have to continue to take the assessment until they are low risk. So they possibly could be taking it all the way to their senior year of high school. Once a student performs at the low risk level, they drop out. So what you're seeing here when it says 26%, it's essentially 26% of the number of students that took it in the spring. Those are the students that were high risk or some risk in the winter. So now 26% of them are no longer at risk. So that's a good thing, actually. And when you look at the actual numbers, so if you look at the table number 1 underneath it, on spring 24, it has 45 students. So that means we moved 45 students from the at-risk category to low risk, and they no longer have to take the assessment. So that's actually a pretty good number.
Thank you.
I was just going to ask about our alternative track teachers that you mentioned as a challenge, and I was happy to see that we were doing some sort of onboarding, you know, classroom management, how to develop your lesson plans and all that stuff that they might not have received because they don't have a teaching degree and had that actual like hands-on experience. So how's that going and how many do we have?
We actually don't have a lot on the alternate route, 3, 4 maybe in their first year. Not like we have in the past. So what we did is we actually opened that up. They had to come to the training. Then we opened it up to anybody on an initial license first year, just in case they wanted to come. And we also invited the teachers that were on an alternate route license last year, the elementary teachers, and they came. So the elementary from last year, they came. We had all of the ones on the alternate this year, and we thought we were going to have 9 people because that's how many were signed up. We ended up with over 20 on that first day. So we had teachers on professional, we had teachers on initial, and we just let them all come. And it was actually a very good 2 days of training. I think that you can definitely tell those that have gone through the program, but it was actually really good to have teachers who have gone the traditional route with teachers that don't have any idea what that looks like, because we had a lot of collaborative conversation. So we are pretty excited. It was a really quick training as to not overwhelm them. They went through round 2 of lesson planning yesterday with their instructional coaches. So we kind of gave them a head start so they knew what the terms were, and yesterday they went through it again. So I hope they are better ready to start the year. We spent 1 day on classroom management because quite honestly that seems to be the thing that is the most difficult for them, and it is the most difficult for those of us who've gone through the program. So that is very understandable. But when you don't know how to set up a classroom, we talked about displays. We talked about building routines. One might think, okay, line up at the door. You don't say line up at the door to a class of students. You say, all right, we need table 1 to line up at the door. Or get out your books. You have to have those basic routines, and you don't know that if you haven't gone through a program.
Okay, I can go again. On page 7, which I think is the section on math, addressing the challenges about students that are struggling to meet benchmarks, and really as they get older, the gaps are continuing to grow. And kind of my thought when I was reading this was there are a lot of challenges we face that are out of the scope of our influence, right? ESSER is expiring, and the at-risk list of interventions that we can use, that's not in our control. But some of these challenges feel like they are in our control, about the wide range of student skills in one classroom and things like that. So what can we do to address those challenges that older students are facing in their math classrooms that are within our control?
We can look at the data that they're coming in with to see if we can place them, if you're at the middle school, in a team a little bit more similar. The high school is already, as they come from the middle to high school, they are looking at the data to determine who's going into their algebra essentials versus algebra 1. I will always caution we have to be a little patient with the high school for a couple of years until we start bringing up the students that have gone through elementary, because those gaps are big. And so we want our high school students to go out with some strong skills. So they may not get to some of the standards or expectations of a typical Algebra 2 class, but we want them to go out learning. If you just throw the content at them just to say they covered the content and they're not learning, we're not doing them any favors. So the high school is really narrowing and trying to give them the path that will give them the best success. And then at the middle school, the principal and instructional coaches are working really hard with the teachers to set up structures for differentiating within the classroom.
I want to say whatever's happening in 4th and 8th grade, awesome, because it was up in math and ELA, so that's awesome. And then I had a question about Parent Square and Remind. I know something we've run into before we had Parent Square, so I'm thinking it's probably resolved now, is that there were limits in the Remind groups, and so then some people couldn't join because like maybe someone had been in there 10 years and they'd never been purged. So are our groups like limitless now, or do they
Pretty
have a better?
much, yes.
Okay,
So
great.
we do have the district license. So really, that is for it is an unlimited. I'm sure there is some kind of limit, but they don't advertise that. So we are covered. The piece that we are running through right now is that merger of Parent Square and Remind isn't quite ready, and they're anticipating that it will be ready by the start of our school year. But it's interesting because on the coasts start later in the calendar year than what we do mainly in the Midwest, and so they are really trying to get that moving. All the other pieces of Parent Square are there. It's just that text feature is still in that beta mode. We would have access to it for sure. It's just we may have some things to work through, but I'm in constant contact with our Parent Square rep, and as the weeks go and we get closer to that time, I will be talking to Dr. Harder and everyone to make sure that everyone has that communication of availability. Parent Square, for the training piece, we're excited that all those pieces are ready. That information is actually going to administrators tomorrow in our weekly update.
Thank you.
And I just had a comment about Parent Square. I'm really happy that we're implementing that. And, I know, Lindell, you had mentioned that two-way communication can kind of be tricky, but I'm just glad we've kind of decided to go to this one platform. So I'm really optimistic that will help with that. And also, I've heard really great things about simplified enrollment. So I'm glad that we're doing that also.
Are there other questions about the report?
The only other thing I had was, Erica, I know you tried really hard last year when you told us about the sessions that you ran. I'm sorry that I can't remember what they're called.
Classroom behavior sessions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it sounds like Jennifer Casey's efforts will be similar.
They will, but
Okay.
more specific.
Sure.
So during those sessions, I had feedback forms and feedback just from those groups.
Mm-hmm.
And then we will also continue to send out forms and things to the staff to really know, okay, behavior in general, that's a huge umbrella. So what specifically do you need in your classroom, whether you're primary, secondary, like what do you need? And then she's going to take those forms, create some of her own professional development, and then during those sessions really dig in and really support the teachers through those specific needs that they have.
And that sounds so amazing. So, because I loved seeing what you had put together, but then I was sad that not more people attended. So do you anticipate maybe better attendance, these more targeted?
We're hoping so.
I hope so, too.
And the trainings that were available last year are still available to teachers
Nice.
on our district website, on our staff site. So even though the attendance at them wasn't ideal, the amount of people that have looked at the resources
good.
is actually high.
Great.
So I can see that,
I
how
did
many
not know
people.
that
I can't
until
see
tonight.
who, but I
Awesome.
can see how many.
Sure.
Which is a good thing. And then, of course, having that offered by Jennifer, we'll look at that, and then I'll update you all too of what that attendance looks like.
Great.
Kind of
Thank
ongoing.
you. That sounds really good.
And I'm just going to add, I was talking to Jennifer this morning, and she was talking about meeting with principals, setting those meetings up and getting, like, where are their biggest needs? And so she can start getting into classrooms and working with students, and then that way, then that builds that capacity and that credibility with teachers. So she's really looking forward. She had a gigantic flow chart to also share with teachers. So she is hitting the ground running, and so I know very excited to partner with Erica.
She asked me how big of a paper is too big, and I was like, can I see what you're talking about first? I'm like, I don't know if this is a trick question or not, but no, it was great. It was great.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
I was just going to comment on the turnover for staff, and the good thing is where it's at, I guess we'll have to see if it can be sustained, but, and I think we could hypothesize why, we hope COVID, is it post-COVID bump or hump or whatever? I don't know, but at least it's better than what we had, so.
And if you remember, we added the high school and Jones for CKH. So there's a lot of, and then plus the resources and trying to make teachers' jobs easier too. Also, please, as you're looking at the graphs, give us feedback if they're easy, if there's a way that they could be easier to read. So we want to just make, if they're easy to read, we'd like that feedback as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone that put in a lot of effort and work on the report. We really appreciate it. We'll move on to item 9A, which is an executive session.
I move to enter into executive session for 15 minutes for the exception for matters which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship under COMA, and to return to open session in this room at 7:29 p.m. Superintendent Dr. Allison Harder Anderson and Attorney Tammy Samoji are invited to join this session. No action is anticipated.
I second.
Motion passes 6-0.
Regular session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay, we'll move on to item 9C, executive session.
I move to enter an executive session for 20 minutes to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel in order to protect the privacy interests of the individual to be discussed, and to return to this room at 7:51 PM. No action is anticipated.
I second.
Motion passes 6-0.
All right, that brings us to future board calendar dates. We will be doing a lot of things on August 7th. Starting at 7:30, we'll have back to school convocation and tours of some of the new buildings for the board. And then August 14th at 6 p.m., we'll have our regular meeting here at Mary Herbert Education Center. And then again on August 28th at 6 p.m., our regular meeting here. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion passes